Hey, welcome in once again, everybody, for the latest edition of Gun on One. I'm Derrick Gunn, and I guess when we look back on what the Eagles did down in New Orleans, you can basically say they snatched the victory from the jaws of defeat. And joining me for this particular show is one of my all-time favorites since I've been in this region. I've known him a long time, and he's a good friend of mine. He is not just a former writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer. He was one of the writers who covered the Philadelphia Eagles. He's currently working for the 33rd team. And, of course, he is the co-host of Monday Night Kickoff on WBCB along with Paul Domowitch, the one and only Paul Domowitch. Domo, how you been, my brother?
Doing well, Gunner. Glad to be with you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. First of all, in a general sense, how would you describe, in your expert opinion, on what we saw in that Eagles-Saints game, man?
Very fortunate. It was not what I expected. I mean, you got a team coming in that scored 91 points in their first two games.
Yeah.
You had a defense on the Eagles side that hadn't been able to stop the run. I thought Alvin Kamara was going to, run rings around them. Vic Fangio came up with a terrific plan. And it worked. I mean, he did a good job of stopping Kamara and getting pressure on Derrick Carr and getting contributions from people that hadn't been holding up their end of the bargain in the first two games, and people like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. So, but they were, when you turn the ball over and lose it, they've got 6 turnovers, I guess, in their first 3 games. You don't win many games when you do that. And to beat a team 15-12, despite the fact that, they had, I think, 4 times they started at their 40 or better. You're very fortunate, and you're very fortunate to get a defensive effort like that from your defense.
Leading up to this game, Vic Fangio said they just need to play better. And you're thinking, there's got to be more to it than this. I mean, this was the Saints offense averaging 406 yards a game, 45.5 points over the first 2 games. And, of course, you can put an asterisk next to one of those wins because it was against Carolina. But all the Eagles defense did was hold this offense to 219 yards and 12 points. You touched on what you saw from the defense, but if you could dig a little deeper, what did he do differently schematically that we didn't see the first 2 games?
Well, it helped that the Saints don't play a lot of 11 personnel, which is 3 wide receivers. So it enabled him to play a lot of 5-man fronts, even 6 he lined up on the line of scrimmage at times. And then he also moved his linebackers closer to the line of scrimmage. The whole idea was to stop the run, not let Kamara get into the secondary like the defense had allowed in the previous 2 games, and they did a great job of that. Their tackling was much better, but there just weren't those lanes. I mean, they did. Jordan Davis actually did what he was, drafted to do, and stuffed things up front. Jalen Carter played like Aaron Donald, and I hope for their sake this wasn't a one-time thing. I mean, this is what they drafted him for. He's still very immature. I hope he gets his act together and realizes he's got to, they expect this of him every week. So we'll see. So anyway, that by stopping the run, with that scheme, it allowed them then to put pressure on Carr, because they weren't in situations like they were. They put him in 3rd and long a lot. First down, was spectacular. They held the Saints, by my calculations, Gunner, to 0.9 yards on first down.
Wow.
A week before against Atlanta, the Falcons averaged 7.9 on first down. So, when you're in those kinds of situations, you're never going to be able to, pin your ears back and rush the quarterback, because you're always on on your heels. So now that they're going to be a challenge this week with Tampa, in the fact that Tampa plays more 11 than almost any team in the league. So 3 wide receivers. So they're going to be back to having to play a lot of nickel. And we'll see. They're going to have to tackle well, but they're not going to be able to stack the box like they did this past week. So it kind of presents a different challenge. We saw what Tampa did to them last year. I think they'll do better, but they're not going to have AJ Brown again. They're probably not going to have Devontae Smith. I mean, that's a big chunk of your offense. They've got Saquon Barkley, and they just got to keep handing him the ball and hope he runs like he did on Sunday.
The light switch finally went on for Jalen Carter in this particular game compared to the two previous games. He played like the Carter we saw him play early in 2023, but then he faded down the stretch.
Yeah.
Why do you think, especially because he's a young, athletic, gifted individual, why do you think his play overall has been so inconsistent?
I think Gunner, I think he's very immature. And they felt they could draft him with the problems he had and the immaturity he has because of the veteran locker room. Well, a lot of that locker room is gone now. Fletcher Cox retired, Jason Kelsey retired. Two of the guys that kept him in line last year when he played pretty well for at least the first half of the season. This year you got BG and not much else there in the way of veterans that can sit him down and say, behave yourself. I think that's a big part of it. And, as well as he played last week, Gunner, I was kind of concerned at the end. I mean, you saw how he kind of started taunting the crowd. And, you don't do that. You played well. You played great. I think he was motivated by all the criticism he got. And that, but, you're not going to have you can't get that every week. You got to find your own way to motivate yourself. So, he's going to have to do that a few more weeks for me to believe that this is going to be more than just a every now and then thing. I mean, but if he can, the talent, that's not even a question. I mean, that guy is, he's Aaron Donald with size. I mean, this guy can dominate. And, that's what they need if they're going to make a Super Bowl run this year. They need he and Jordan Davis both to dominate inside because, they're not getting a lot on the outside. I mean, Bryce Huff has been a bust so far. Nolan Smith, one of their first round picks from last year, has been invisible. And BG played a lot this past week. Had a big, he was responsible for that. I mean, I don't mean to minimize Reed Blankenship's play. That was a spectacular interception. But the reason it was underthrown was because Brandon Graham got in the face of Derek Carr on that play. So, but, BG is 36 years old. He can't play. I believe he played 62% of the snaps on Sunday, Gunner. He can't do that every week or there'll be nothing left. So they need to pace it with him. Vic mentioned that, I think, in his press conference today, that they need, he can't play 12 snaps in a row. They have to space it and I mean, it's not that he's not in condition. I mean, BG's in tremendous condition, but it's tremendous condition for a 36-year-old guy who's been playing this game for 13 years. So, or 15, I guess. So, with respect to getting back to Carter, Gunner, he's just got to grow up. And I hope for their sake and for his sake that happens sooner than later. But it's going to be a gradual process.
You were talking about Jordan Davis. Is that the best overall game you've seen him play in his short time here in Philadelphia? Because I can't remember another game where he was that impactful from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean that sack he had was spectacular. Showing his athleticism. That's the reason he was a first round pick, because of what he did at the combine, the speed he's got, the strength. Now again, just like Jalen, he's got to do it every week. So it's just gonna. We'll see this week. If you hope for their sake, if those two guys aren't heard from this week, they don't win. If they dominate like they did on Sunday, Vic's got himself a very good defense, because I like a lot of the other parts of it. I like Quinyon Mitchell is turning into a cornerback that I really, really like. I mean, he's afraid of no one. You don't expect that from a guy that came from Toledo. Maybe a Big Ten school who's played in front of 100,000 people every week, but. So I mean, he's given him a great outside corner. I think Cooper DeJean is going to come along with the more practice reps he gets. So I like that defense, but everything hinges around those guys inside.
Hey, can you remember a better bargain acquisition for Howie Roseman than Zach Bond? I mean, he had another double-digit tackle performance, and he's leading the NFL in tackles.
Yeah.
You better sign this man now because each week the price is going to go up.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of offsets to some degree the what's happening with Bryce Huff. But
No,
the thing, I mean, the thing with Bond, it's not just that they got themselves a bargain who's been a tremendous player, but I mean, he wasn't even the kind of player. I mean, the Saints used him strictly as a part-time edge rusher.
yep.
I mean, nobody saw him as an off-ball linebacker except Howie, and I'm assuming Vic Fangio, who also saw it. And he's been a tremendous player. I mean, this guy's on a he's on an All-Pro pace right now. I mean, two out of his first 3 games have been just spectacular.
I can't say how pleasantly surprised that I've been with Nakobe Dean. Everybody through the OTAs, the summer, the training kept saying, what are we going to get for him considering what happened last year? He didn't play that well when he played. He got injured and lost a good portion of the season. But this year, through 3 games, he's made his presence known in 3 games. He's stepped in the hole. He's made tackles. He's stuffed runs. He's been everything we've been waiting to see from him.
Yeah, I really liked him. I liked him when they drafted him, Gunner. Everybody, I mean, he talked about his size or his injury history. His injury history is the biggest concern. If he can stay healthy, I don't think there's any question that they've got themselves a very good linebacker. He's smart. He's a leader. I mean, Vic doesn't blitz much, but this kid, at Georgia was a tremendous blitzer. And I'm sure that Vic's going to find ways to use that to his advantage as the season goes along. But he played downhill on Sunday. They moved him up closer to the line. He got off blocks, made plays. Everything you want. I mean, those 2 linebackers were spectacular. I mean, when you consider the concern last year at the end of the season about the linebacking position, right now it's looking real good.
This defense prior to this game against the Saints, man, just left you like a punch in a gut watching them play. But the one stat that really stood out is that opponents were only 3 for 10 in the red zone against this defense. And if they don't make those stops in the red zone, they could very well be sitting here, 1-2 instead of 2-1.
Yeah. I kind of remember some of Jim Johnson's defenses. I mean, they're always good, but there were a few years where they would get punched around between the 20s, but they would stiffen in the red zone and keep teams out of the end zone. And that's what you saw Sunday from this team. You've seen it, in the first 2 games as well. I think that's the kind of team. Vic's always had teams that have been pretty good in the red zone, so I don't expect that to change. They just, you can't tempt fate like they did in the first 2 weeks and give up that many yards and not put teams in 3rd and long. They play like they did Sunday. This is going to be an awfully good defense this season.
I hate to keep bringing him up, but because of his inept play, we have to keep talking about him. And you mentioned Bryce Huff. I mean, they gave this man $51 million, and I believe he's getting $17 million this year. You look at his stats; he has 1 assisted tackle in 3 games. 1 assisted tackle. He's playing 43% of the snaps.
Yeah.
How did the Eagles miscalculate on what they thought that they were getting from this guy?
Well, if you're them, you're saying, well, it's at some point it's going to click. I mean, I don't know I can't agree with that. Howie is a big believer in undersized speed guys on the edge. He thinks they can become, great players. That Nolan Smith is a classic example of same thing on the other side. And right now, neither one of them are very good. I mean, Bryce Huff, you pay that kind of money, you're bringing him in to be an every down edge rusher. He can't set the edge. He can't play the run. He's not. You saw a couple times on Sunday when he was out there. He wasn't rushing the passer very well either. I mean, he'd run into the tackle, and then the tackle would just like, okay, you're not going anywhere, bud. It's like, get away from here. Right. To Vic's credit, Vic's not going to play people that can't help him, no matter what they're being paid. Huff played just 32% of the snaps on Sunday. I believe that was like the 7th most among defensive linemen. And he's not going to play that much if this continues. I think even if Carter and Davis continue to play well, Gunner, that they've extended the trade deadline now to about mid-season. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head. But if Huff or Smith, if neither one of these guys starts playing much better, Howie's going to be forced to make a move because he needs to get Brandon some help. They don't have anybody else other than Josh Sweat on the edge. Those two guys can contribute, so they're going to have to do something desperate. They don't have a lot of cap room left because of the moves they made for people like Barkley and for Huff, but. Whether this guy, whether the light bulb's ever going to go on, I don't know. I just don't know that he's good enough. Fangio's been very candid. They know what they want him to be, and he's not there. And that's why he's not playing snaps. So we'll see. But right now, I'm not very hopeful.
I had put out there today on Twitter or X, whichever you prefer, when it comes to Devin White. I said, you know what? They should basically just cut the guy, suck up the financial loss and let him go on his way. A lot of people responded, why? Keep him as a backup. You never know when the Kobe Dean is going to go down. He's valuable in terms of helping the young guys. How do you see it? Should they keep him? They paid him good money to sit on the bench. The second straight game, he was a healthy scratch.
The problem is a guy like White, when he's not starting, can be a cancer. He can be a problem. He can be a guy that's not very motivated and is going to sulk. So I wouldn't be opposed to them getting rid of him. And given, I think Jeremiah Trotter is going to be a terrific player eventually. Right now he's a good special teams player, but I think he's already watching him in that last preseason game. I think he's ready to contribute more if they had to put him out there. So the problem you have with getting rid of Devin White right now is, we talked about Nakobe Dean and his injury history. You want to believe he's going to stay healthy, but believing and hoping are two different things.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's flip to the offensive side. When you look at the stats, Jalen Hurts, 311 yards. A lot of quarterbacks would kill the throw for 311 yards, but the turnovers again, Domo, supersede what he did. He made some plays when he had to, but he now has 26 turnovers in his last 20 games. And it's not. Is it mechanics? Is it him still evolving as a young quarterback in the National Football League? What do you attribute it to?
Yeah. He's got 6 already this year, which, in his defense, the one interception in the end zone which was his second red zone interception of the season already. You could probably pin on Devontae Smith. He was supposed to run across the defender's face, and he didn't. The defender, the cornerback, jumped the route, and but still, it's an interception, and it's Jalen's fault. He's been careless on the fumbles. That when he took off and ran, he was unaware that there was a guy behind him. You got to protect the ball. He had it in one hand, and when he got tripped up, the ball came out. His decision making concerns me, Gunner. He's got ability. He's accurate. Right now he's he's completing 70% of his passes, which is a career high for him. And it's what they need from him. I mean, they've shortened up a lot of the offense. You saw that especially after they lost Devontae on Sunday. That throwing a lot of shorter stuff. They want to use Barkley in the passing game as well. Get Goedert more involved like they did on Sunday. So that helps. But he just you watch him back there. He's had tremendous protection in these first 3 games. And there have been people open. When you watch the all-22 tape on some of these plays where he's sitting back there and looking, there are people open. And I don't know why he can't see them, or it's just befuddling. I don't know if he doesn't go through his progressions fast enough, or if he's just not seeing things right now. But he's got to get better at that. And he's got to cut it. But, first and foremost, he's got to cut down on the turnovers. I mean, I think they're -4 in turnovers right now. I think they've only forced 2 on defense. There's only 2 teams with winning records in the first 3 games that are -2 or worse. Them and amazingly Kansas City, which is 3-0 with a -2 turnover differential. But yeah, I mean, you got to protect the football. He knows that. I mean, they stressed it last year, and he had the 20 turnovers. So he's got to get better at it. We'll see what happens.
Guess who's leading the National Football League in rushing? The one and only Saquon Barkley. This man put on a show, gave them a huge boost when it counted most, 17 carries, $147, 2 touchdowns. He has found new life running behind this Philadelphia Eagles offense of line compared to what he had to endure his career in New York. I mean, this man has been unbelievable. And, I mean, let's say it. If they don't have him in the backfield, Domo, they're 0-3 at this point.
Yeah. And Sunday, they're going to have to lean on him again heavily against Tampa. I mean, Tampa has not been particularly good against the run. So, we're going to see a lot of him. I mean, he's got to be the happiest man in the world to be. I know a part of him didn't want to leave the Giants because of the fact that that's where, that's the team that drafted him. That's where he was. But they were also horrible, and he had no blocking. And now he's got the best line in football blocking for him. Even Sunday, they're missing Lane Johnson. They're missing Mekhi Becton, who both get hurt. And Fred Johnson and Tyler Steen turn in terrific performances and just block the heck out of him. You watch some of his runs Sunday, Gunner. I mean, it looks like there's no room there, and then suddenly he's out and gone. He's fun to watch, and my only concern, and it's not a big concern because I know they know this, but he's had a lot of touches going back to Penn State in the years in the NFL. And right now he's on a pace for something like 478 touches this season, which is unheard of. So, I mean, they know at some point they've got to be a little bit more prudent, but they also know that if they need him to win, they're going to give him the ball. And right now they need him to win.
Nick Sirianni talked about how to try to gauge better, not to overuse him. But when you got a thoroughbred like that, and we've seen that with a lot of good backs in the National Football League that get used up early in their careers. I mean, let's face it, especially with the injuries they have right now, they have no choice but to lean on this man to help Jalen Hurts out and take a lot of the pressure off him.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said earlier, Gunner, I mean, he also is a big, I think you'll see this week, especially with, if Devontae doesn't play and they're missing both he and A.J. Brown, you're going to see Barkley used a lot more. You're going to see Gainwell used a lot more in the passing game. It's funny because that, I love that aspect of what I think Kellen Moore's offense brings to this team.
Yep.
And yet Jalen doesn't seem to like throwing to the running backs. I mean, I know he's got that wheel route for a touchdown in week 1 to Saquon was tremendous. But I mean, he's one of his problems last year was he just became obsessed with the deep ball to Smith and Brown. He feels that with those two guys, you throw it up there, even if they don't look like they're open, they're going to go get the ball. And for the most part, that's true. But I mean, what we saw in those last 6-7 games when this team, the offense particularly collapsed, and in the playoffs against the Bucs, teams took away. I mean, AJ Brown I don't think he had a touchdown catch in the last 6 regular season games, or the Bucs playoff game. Teams took those guys away, dared him to throw underneath. And it was a tough it was a tough adjustment for Jalen, and that's why he played so poorly down the stretch. So I mean, that's why he needs to become. We've always heard coaches tell us, well, he took what they gave him, about a quarterback, and we always roll our eyes. But that's what you need to do, and that's what he needs to do. If they're going to take away his outside guys, throw the ball to Dallas Goedert like you did on Sunday. Throw the ball to Barkley or Gainwell, or Calcaterra. We'll see. It's a learning process. I'm hoping he gets better at that the more he's in Kellen Moore's offense, because I think this offense can be great for him. I mean, we saw what Dak Prescott did when Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator in Dallas. So again, it's going to be a learning process for him.
You look at Dallas Goedert, had a career day, 10 catches, 170 yards, but he only had 7 catches the first 2 games. He only had 559 yards last year. Why do they underutilize his talents? I mean, this guy, arguably, if you put up the numbers, and unfortunately, we measure football players by their numbers alone sometimes, he's a top 3 tight end in the National Football League unequivocally. But yet, for some reason, Nick Sirianni and this offense continue to underutilize him. And for the life of me, I can't figure it out, man.
Yeah. Whenever you suggest that, Gunner, you always get the answer that, well, they've got these 2 wide receivers, the best. They might be the best tandem in the league. And that's true. But like I said, teams can take them away by playing the 2 deep safety. And this guy is a tremendous weapon. I mean, he could be to this offense what Travis Kelce was. He's not so far this year, right. But what Travis Kelce's been to Mahomes and the Chiefs offense. And I wish he would rely more on him. I mean, the big thing about Sunday not only was the catches and the yards, but he went to him on 3rd down, Gunner. I mean, he had 3 huge catches on 3rd and long, including that long one in the 4th quarter. I think that was, I want to say it was 3rd and 16, or it might have been another one that was 3rd and 16. But Dallas has not been a 3rd down pass catcher most of his career here. I think the most passes he's caught on 3rd down for them in a season's been 8 or 9. I mean, when they've needed to go to somebody on 3rd down, typically, especially since Jalen got here in 2020, it's been one of the wide receivers. So I was happy to see that. A lot of it, again, was out of necessity because of the fact that A.J. Brown wasn't out there and then Devontae got hurt. But I hope he's, Jalen needs to trust people. And I think, I think if you don't trust Dallas Goedert, I don't know what you're thinking. So, I hope this is the beginning of a trend.
Is it fair to say Nick Sirianni almost cost this team a win? I mean, 2 4th down situations. He admitted in the press conference that, he called those plays, and he also admitted that he does call a percentage of the plays. And, we wondered, does Kellen Moore have autonomy to call all the plays? Well, we find out now that Nick does have input still. You think he would have learned his lesson from Monday night when he called a 4th down play that didn't work as well. Do you want to see Nick Sirianni calling the plays? Because the question is out there. Does he have the right to override Kellen Moore? To me, yes, he does. He's a head coach. A lot of people think he should not have the right to override Kellen Moore. Yeah.
He's on that headset, and he certainly has the right. I think there are a lot of coaches that don't call the plays, either defense or offense, but they're comfortable in that role.
Yeah.
They're CEO coaches that like the freedom to, manage the game, oversee the whole picture, the big picture. He's a guy that basically he's in the role. He's in the role he's in, Gunner, because he got demoted. He was told, you find another offensive coordinator and he's going to call the plays. That wasn't his decision. So, and he's having a hard time adjusting to that, and you're on the sideline and you're watching a game that's close. You can't stay away. You're an offensive coach. You want to start calling the plays again. I mean, when they called that fake tush push, Gunner, they usually when they run the tush push, they just line up quickly again and run it. There's a timeout. The TV camera is showing him watching Jalen talk to Nick on the sideline for like a full minute. You knew they weren't running a typical tush push. I mean, it doesn't, you don't need to talk to the guy this long. And Jalen's got this glassy-eyed look like, what are we doing? Just let me go and sneak it. And, so you knew something was up, and it ended up being that fake and giving it to Barkley. And I'm sure that the Saints knew the same thing. They knew something was up. My guess is that Nick felt without Lane, without Becton, he just wasn't real confident the tush push would work. And so that's why he decided to get a little too cute with it. But he cost him, his decisions in that game cost him 6 points on offense, or 2 field goals they could have had. And then it also cost them the touchdown that New Orleans had at the end, because when he decided to go with the 60-yard field goal attempt by Elliott, now he can kick that. There's no question he's got the leg. He's got 61-yarders, 2 of them in his career. But in that situation, why would you put a defense that has played so well for you all game in a situation where he misses that kick, they got the ball at the 50-yard line? They've only got to go up half the field to score. I mean, that's asking too much of that defense, and it backfired. So yeah, that was the week before, Gunner. I actually defended him for the 2 moves he made. I didn't have a problem with the 3rd and 3 throw to Barkley. I didn't have a problem with him taking the field goal. But Sunday, man, he was just out of his mind and making mistakes. I mean, I just, like you said, every 4th down decision he made was curious.
Should he stay away from play calling and let Kellen do all the play calling?
Yeah, he should. I mean, Kellen Moore is pretty good at this. We're not talking about Brian Johnson, who was in his first year as an offensive coordinator and might need some help. Yeah, but I don't know that Nick can stay out of it. They may be telling him, you're going to stay out of it. That may be Jeffrey Lurie's message to him. Nick, do you like your job? Well, then leave him alone.
Hey, they have a bye coming up, an early bye, which is probably the earliest bye that they've had since I've covered this team for over 2 decades. But considering the bulk of injuries they've had, their bye couldn't come at a more opportune time right now. But before they get to the bye, they've got to deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I can't get a finger or pulse on this Tampa Bay team. I mean, they go into Detroit and they held a high-powered Lions offense to 16 points and beat them on the road. Then they go home and get smacked by a winless Denver Broncos team, and Baker Mayfield gets sacked 7 times. But we do know this. Todd Bowles has had pretty good success when it comes to defending Jalen Hurts. And if Jalen has to go into this game without AJ and without Devontae, and bring Covey for that matter, that does not bode well for this team.
Yeah. You can count on Todd Bowles blitzing, obviously, on Sunday. I mean, that's going to be that's what he did to Jalen last year. That's what, that was Jalen's Achilles heel during that collapse. They couldn't deal with the blitz, and that's what Todd did to him in the playoffs. He'll do it again on Sunday. The key is going to be they got to be able to run the ball early, Gunner, and that kind of takes a lot of the teeth out of Todd's blitz. If you're in third and shorts, so we'll see how that goes. Also, what you saw in Sunday's game when the Bucs lost was they fell behind early. And they had to play catch up. So, that takes away a lot of your aggressiveness when you're playing catch up. That's what happened in 2022 with the Eagles when they went to the Super Bowl, when they scored 121 points in the first half. Everybody they played was playing catch up. Second half, you're just having your defensive line pin their ears back and rush the quarterback. And what happens? The Eagles had 70 sacks that year, third most in the NFL history. The problem right now is Eagles haven't scored a point yet in the first quarter. So the fast starting Eagles, that's what they need to become. They have not done anything on first, second, and third possessions so far in the first three games. I don't know what they need to do change that, but one thing we're going to see, I think, on Sunday is just a heavy dose early on of Saquon Barkley.
All right, to get away from the X's and O's of what the Eagles are doing through three games. Now, you've been retired from the Philadelphia Inquirer for a while, but the writing juices continue to flow. I understand that you're in the midst of writing a book. Can you tell me more about this book that you're compiling?
Yeah, I'm writing a book on Sam Mills.
Okay.
I started started doing the research, Gunner, about 20 right after I took the buyout in 2021. It was kind of an idea I had always had. I mean, you're familiar with Sam's story. Sure. It's just amazing. 5'9" linebacker cut by Cleveland, the CFL, catches, gets a break when the USFL comes along, and then goes and plays for New Orleans and Carolina, dies of cancer at the age of 45, but ends up making the Hall of Fame in the last year of his eligibility as a modern era candidate. So it's just a phenomenal story. And I knew Sam. I really liked him. One of the nicest guys I've ever covered in my career. I was there covering the Stars when he played for them in 1983 and 84 and 85. It just seemed like a natural story. I put it on hold after doing a lot of the research because I was working for the 33rd team after I took the buyout. This year, I realized I needed to get back to it and focus on it, and that's what I'm doing. So I'm hoping to have it finished by end of the year or maybe late January at the worst. I think it's it's the most gratifying thing I've probably ever done in my career. I love telling stories like this about people like him. Now I'm getting a chance to write a whole book about a guy.
How many people have you interviewed on him, and how many more do you have to go in terms of interviewing before you finish the book?
There's still a few people, but it's right around 75 people. I mean, I talked to,
wow.
He played for, it's easy to segment his life because of the fact that he played in the USFL, then he went to New Orleans with Jim Mora, played there for 9 years, and then ended his career in Carolina, became a coach. Guy's got a statue of him, played 3 years in Carolina, and they built a statue of him in front of their stadium. I coached there until he, passed away. So anyway, I talked to teammates and coaches at every one of those places, friends that he grew up with in Long Branch, New Jersey, family. So yeah, it was a lot. It never seemed like work, Gunner. I mean, it seemed like I knew who to talk to next, and they were only too happy to talk about Sam because they loved him so much. This was a guy that, he was diagnosed with intestinal cancer and lived. I talked to him about 8 months before he passed, and he was still coaching. And he was supposed to have died like a year and a half before that. I mean, that's how much little time they gave him. But he was just such a fighter. And yet when he finally got close to the end and he knew, that he was not going to make it, he started planning his own funeral. I mean, down to the point of the menu. The funeral for him was in Red Bank, New Jersey, up near his home in Long Branch. And then they had a huge memorial service down in Charlotte for him. It was, everybody that he ever touched and played for and was coached by showed up for that. So it was, it's a story that I just am really, when I sit down to write every day, I can't wait to do it, because it's just, because this guy was such not only a great football player, but a great human being.
I can't wait to see the finished product, and when it hits publication, I can assure you that I will be buying a copy.
I'll send you a autographed copy.
Which I'd appreciate it. I would welcome it with open arms. Coming from you, I would treasure it for a lifetime.
Thank you. I definitely will.
Hey, that's Paul Domowitch. You can catch him as he's the senior writer for the 33rd Team. He's also the co-host of the Monday Night Kickoff on WBCB with Paul Domowitch, and he is a author once again in the making. And I can't wait to hear that finish. We can't wait to see that finished product. Domo, I can't thank you for taking some time to talk to me on Gun on One. And, of course, you can follow Domo on Twitter or X at PDomo as well. Paul Domowitch, we will be talking football again soon, my man.
Been a lot of fun, Gunner. Take care. Good talking to you.
Likewise, buddy. You take care as well. All right, that's going to wrap up another edition of Gun on One. Hey, thank you for hanging out with me. We'll be back next week after they play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down in Tampa. Until then, stay healthy, stay safe. So long, everybody.